Hello, everybody. Jose Rodriguez back again. I just recently had a question from someone who saw a change in the way their prints were being produced by their printer. I'm not going to mention which printer it was because that's irrelevant. He was getting a slightly yellow tint all of a sudden on their prints. And these images were not really continuous tone images, they were more graphical in their design and so forth. So I thought, wait a minute, the photo you're providing me just shows me, I don't have another comparison to compare it against. So, how can I determine what the issue you're even describing is? Because, of course, it's not color corrected to begin with, and it doesn't quite look probably as it looks on the person's end. And so, in this case, I had no clue how to approach this person's problem. So the paper, after I pulled some teeth back and forth and I asked what kind of paper they were using, they told me. And I said, okay, that's a very high end, high quality type, fine art type paper. So why don't you do this? Since you're claiming that it was printing correctly prior, but I don't have an example of that. In other words, I don't have a control image to look at. I will take your word for the fact that you're getting a different result. But here's what you can do, and this is a recommendation for anyone who has this issue. First of all, run a nozzle check. That's the best diagnostic tool the printer driver can provide you. And then compare to previous. Don't throw them out. Date them and keep them in a little file. And that way you can then compare your when the printer was working correctly to now that you claim something has happened and your prints are not quite looking normal. See if you see a difference. If you do see the difference, then you know that is one of the channels affecting this. And of course, if it's just a simple matter of a few nozzles being clogged, run the cleaning cycle. If you have a Canon printer, you can run a particular zone containing that particular color. If you have something fancy like an Epson uh, P5000, that's a 12 channel printer with 6 zones. Each zone contains 2 colors. So if it's yellow, just choose the zone that has yellow. The same thing for Canon printers. This was a Canon printer, by the way. So in order to find out if it's the printer's fault or the paper's fault or even your fault, you did something. Especially if you updated to a new OS. And that happens a lot with Mac users. You update your OS to a new one, and it defaults itself to a different set of settings for your driver. So you got to be careful with that. Windows is not as smart. It just leaves everything alone, and you don't have to really worry about it. So here's what you do. You choose that image. That's the one that you're using as an example, and print it on that particular paper that you claim used to be okay, but now it's printing weird. And then switch that paper for something else. In fact, if it's a Canon printer, just a normal resin coated ProLuster or glossy. If it's an Epson printer, the same thing. Just a common Epson paper and use that profile. Make sure that if you're using a profile in your printing application, you turn off color management in the driver. That's important. You cannot have both of them conducting color management. Or let the driver control color by choosing that paper type and choosing the ICM mode, color mode, ICM, ICM, okay? And that will then tell the driver to use the matching profile for that Epson paper or that Canon paper. That way you know that that control print you're using a matching brand paper as opposed to the unknown brand that you're comparing against. It will use the correct profile. For the unknown brand, make sure that you manually use that profile in whatever you're printing with and then tell the driver to no color adjustment. Set it to none on a Canon printer or no color adjustment in an Epson printer. And then compare the two. If the Canon paper on the Canon printer or the Epson paper on the Epson printer looks correct, then it's not the printer, it's your paper. Okay? It's your paper. What happened? I don't know. No clue, but it's your paper. Otherwise, you would get the same so-called bad results on both papers. Okay? You would see whatever is bothering you, you will see it on both papers. That way it will not be the paper, it will be the printer. Something happened. Something happened to your settings. Like I said, maybe it defaulted back to something else than what you have it set at. Okay? So again, you need to do a control. And your control in this case has to be a branded paper for that printer. Okay? Especially if you're using a third party so-called paper from another manufacturer. Make sure you use their profile as well. All right, that is it for now. Again, diagnostics in printing can be very difficult. At least I am very happy with myself that I have become a very good diagnostician, if you want to call it that. When it comes to problems, I can pretty much pin down what the reason for an issue is, unless it's something super duper weird and I just can't figure out what it is. But eventually I do. Eventually I do. All right, that is it for now. Thank you so much as always. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and like. Click that little bell so you are notified when I upload something new. That way you know that Mr. Joe uploaded a video and you can kick back whenever you want to later on and watch it. All right. As always, happy printing everybody, and bye-bye.